Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today we've got a video about probably the most important and iconic tool on the entire battleship. On any Navy ship for that matter, probably any ship in general. We are of course going to be talking about the needle gun. The needle gun is a pneumatic tool. It uses compressed air and it's designed to remove paint. Obviously, there's a fair little bit of that on the battleship, and sometimes it peels off, gets damaged, and then you start to get corrosion. So the needle gun is your primary tool for dealing with that on board the ship. In fact, the ship has air compressors that are sending compressed air all over the ship as built, that you can just plug one of these hoses into to get pneumatic power wherever you need it, mostly exterior, to do this kind of work. Nowadays, we don't charge that system. We don't bother with the original air compressors, and we're not entirely sure that the pipes will hold pressure after all this time. So we've got regular compressors that you plug into the wall and then plug one of these into, and we can move them around from work site to work site. The needle gun does two important things. One is it removes the rust and the paint that's there to get you down to a nearly white metal. Mechanically cleaning metal is almost as good as using a really good sandblast or high pressure water blast to get down to white metal. And two, it's going to profile that metal. A nice smooth metal surface actually doesn't hold most kinds of paint very well. But the needle gun's going to leave little dimples in the metal, and that's going to leave enough of a profile for the paint to adhere to. Or I guess more accurately in this case, the primer, or the rust inhibiting pre-primer, depending on what system of coatings we're using on any given area. So behind me, you can see where our painters have been painting, and they've already primed this section of turret number 2. And you can see the work zone behind me where they're working on redecking the ship. When we pull up the old teak, the first thing we do at that point is treat the metal, get it back down to bare metal. If we were in a shipyard or we had a sandblaster, hydroblaster, that would be the next step, is you just blast the whole area, get all the paint and rust up and get to a white metal. But since we don't have any of that equipment, mechanically cleaning it is the best we can do. So again, that is more than good enough. And your system of coatings is only as good as your surface preparation. If you put paint down over rust, that rust will be through the paint in under a month. So getting a nearly white metal surface is absolutely critical. And most of the work we do on this ship, you know, this paint is all still perfectly intact, so we're not going to do the entire turret. We had some areas here that had some pitting. You can still see the edge of the original paint. So you could use the needle gun. This thing is incredibly loud. If you've ever heard like a loud grinding noise in the background of any of our videos, especially when we're inside the ship, that's a needle gun that's like 400 feet away on the other side of the ship. When I needle gun, I put foamies in my ears, I put ear defenders on, I wear work gloves, I wear safety glasses, and a respirator because I'm kicking up a bunch of paint. So I don't want to breathe all that stuff in. Some job sites might require more than that. Some job sites might not require all that. It really depends. And of course, if for whatever reason there are other things in that paint, it's lead-based paint, which fortunately we don't have much of on this ship, thanks to all the remediation they did in the 80s, you would be doing even more protection, personal protective equipment than what I just described. But especially out here, most of this has been blasted to white metal and painted by the museum, so we know exactly what kind of paint is on there. It's also worth pointing out that there are a couple different types of needle guns. This one is great for doing vertical surfaces like this. It's got a good handle on it. Most needle guns that I've seen in the past don't have the grip on it. They're just like this, and that's great if you're sitting on the deck doing that area under you. You can just take that away. So you just hit this, the needles would be coming in and out thanks to the compressed air, making a god-awful racket. And it is really It's like beating on a drum. It's the vibrations more so than the direct mechanical hitting the paint. It's vibrating the steel enough to cause the paint to start to pop off in chips and flakes and to pop that rust off. This is especially great. Here you can see we've got some Class A armor here, so it's got some pitting from when it was cast, and that is really difficult to get down into. That's where rust likes to form. So a needle gun is a great tool to get down into that pitting. Once you have mechanically cleaned that with the needle gun, you've gotten your profile on it, you've gotten all the rust and the paint off, the next thing you would do is come back with an angle grinder. I prefer a cup brush on mine, but there's regular wire wheels too. And I would hit the whole surface just to knock off any flash rust that's on there, and especially feather the edge between the old paint and the new paint. And then at that point, you can put a new coat of paint on. Now, the problem is the new coat of paint hasn't faded in the sun like the old coat of paint. So usually when you do something like that, you would end up painting the entire turret. You would spot hit any of the areas with the needle gun and the primer that have flaked off. Anywhere where the paint is intact, you leave it in place, and then you put your primer down, then you put your overcoat on the whole thing just so it all ends up the same color and it can fade evenly. So your ship doesn't look like a patchwork quilt. So those of you who are in the Navy, I am sure that you have needle gun stories. Let us know about them in the comment section down below. What are some other tools you think are important? Let us know down there. For those of you guys who use needle guns in the Navy, how many of you fell asleep leaning over one while working on the deck? I wasn't even in the Navy and I've fallen asleep over top of a needle gun. But let us know your stories down there in the comment section. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourself. Your support allows us to do this important maintenance on the ship so she continues to look good and is preserved from rust. There's a link in the description below to donate to the ongoing preservation efforts on board the ship. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about us in the museum. Thanks for watching.